come to me.
Focus Features invites you to succumb to the darkness.
Nosferatu.
From director Robert Eggers comes a masterpiece of horror.
He is coming. This creature is a force more powerful than evil. It is death itself.
Nosferatu. Rated R. Under 17 without parent. Now playing only in theaters. Special engagements in Dolby and IMAX.
The rhythm of the holidays is in the air at Cartier. Ring in the winter season with the enchanting universe of the Maison's creations that set the tempo for precious memories and momentous occasions. Extraordinary jewelry, watches, accessories, objects, and more hit all the right notes with a touch of magic. Shimmering with a symphony of style, these gifts shine in perfect harmony. Visit Cartier.com to shop holiday gifts.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Creating really great retail experiences with multiple stores, teams, and workflows is tough. But with Shopify's point-of-sale system, you can do it across thousands of locations without complexity. It's a unified command center, bringing together in-store and online operations so customers can shop how they want, and staff have the tools to close every sale. Check out shopify.com/special offer and create the best retail experiences without complexity.
Hello, and welcome to Scare You to Sleep. I'm your host, Shelby Novak, and I'm here to read you the last bedtime story of the year. I thought, what better way to end the year than with something to do with sleep, nightmares, somnambulism, and all that jazz. Very on brand. So this week, I have a story for you from author Matthew N. Clark, who you'll recognize from his beautifully strange story, It's Here, featured in episode 351, It's Fall, Y'all. This week, Matthew has for us, Sleeptalking. The nightmare started over a month ago when I heard my husband mumble, "He's standing in the garden. He's looking in the window." It must have been 2 a.m. I sighed and rubbed my eyes. You could set your watch by him. At that time, my sleep had been disturbed regularly by Daryl's sleepwalking and sleep-talking, and sometimes sleep yelling. He'd never done anything like that before. It had just started out of the blue about 3 days prior to that night. That night, when he was whispering, mumbling while he dreamt. His voice was low and hushed. "He's trying to get inside." I couldn't help but look over at the dark, curtained windows. I imagined that if I pulled the curtains aside, I'd see a ghostly hand pressed up on the window pane. The little hairs on my neck stood up. I shook my husband awake. He jolted like he'd just tripped over something, and his eyes shot open. He breathed heavily. "Was I talking again?" he asked, out of breath. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "Yeah, it just keeps getting creepier." My eyes were wide as I spoke. He looked over at me, his face tired. "Was it the guy in the garden?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, you said he was trying to look through the windows." He rubbed his eyes. "I can't remember what it was all about. It's so vivid while I'm asleep, but as soon as I'm awake, it just slips away." I stroked his arm gently, trying to comfort him. let's try and get back to bed. We need to pick up Jacob early. He nodded and got out of bed to fetch some water and some melatonin. I drank the rest of the cold chamomile tea I'd not finished the night before. Then we went back to bed. It was about 3 a.m. when we fell back to sleep. At 7 o'clock the next morning, my alarm rang loud and shrill. I kept my eyes closed as I fumbled for it and hit the snooze button. By 7:30, we were up and on our way to the train station. Jacob was waiting for us with a large suitcase and an old leather backpack. Jacob was our nephew. He was a scrawny guy with dark brown hair and bright green eyes. Jacob had just started his final year at university and was studying zoology. He was considering veterinary school after his bachelor's degree was done and was visiting schools around the country. Daryl and I lived near a large veterinary school, so Jacob had come to see if it was any good. His eyes had dark circles from exhaustion. His whole face seemed to droop. Nevertheless, he still gave us a small, warm smile as we pulled up. "How was the train?" I asked as he climbed into the back seat. Daryl loaded Jacob's suitcase into the trunk and got back into the driver's seat. "Delayed and uncomfortable. I was just managing to get some sleep right as I arrived." "Figures," Jacob said, his voice irritable and feeble. "Well, you can get plenty of rest at the house. It's quiet now with everyone away for the holidays. The family of 4 next door is in Ecuador." We continued to chat as Daryl drove us home. Jacob mentioned he was excited to check out the school and would leave to take a tour the next day. I asked Daryl to drive him, but Jacob said he'd rather take the bus so he could get to know the area better. The day after that was Sunday, so we slept in and had breakfast food for lunch. After that, Jacob left for the bus stop. Daryl and I did some chores and we sat down to read. The air was peaceful and quiet. I remember it being the last time I felt relaxed, felt normal and comfortable in my own home. The day had been warm and bright, and sunbeams illuminated small motes of dust in the air. Pretty soon, Daryl and I both fell asleep on the couch, leaning against one another. Suddenly, there was a loud shout, and I sat up, my eyes wide and suddenly very awake. Daryl was sitting up straight, his chest heaving with breath. That was a bad one." "What happened? Why did you shout?" I asked, my hand on my chest. I was dreaming about that guy again, except he wasn't alone. This time he was with a woman. They were standing outside." He turned to look at the window. They were throwing rocks. Out of nowhere, there was a deafening shatter of glass. I yelled. Daryl leapt to his feet in fright. I glanced down at the floor. Among a pile of broken glass lay a single rock. It was small, dark, and smooth, almost perfectly round. As soon as I looked at it, I felt a cold trail of goose flesh run down my neck and arms. There was something so unnatural about that rock. It looked artificially polished. Daryl and I ran to the window, carefully avoiding the shards. There was nothing outside, save my front yard. My petunias and crane lilies waved gently in the breeze. No one was standing there. The air was thick with silence. All the neighbors were still away on holiday. Daryl and I looked at one another, our eyes searching each other's expression for some kind of explanation. I was hoping Daryl would declare himself the mastermind of this terrifying practical joke, but no confessions came. "Must be kids playing a prank," he said, as he cleaned the glass and tossed the stone into the yard. but his face was still white, and his hands trembled. He wasn't quite convinced. Later that same evening, Jacob returned from his sightseeing and was thrilled. We decided not to tell Jacob about what had happened, and Daryl, being a very proficient engineer, had already replaced the window pane that afternoon. Jacob couldn't stop going on about the facilities and the local cafes. We were so happy for him. We then decided to order pizza and watch some silly rom-coms. We all went to bed at around midnight. As I turned off my light, I couldn't help but look over at the curtained windows momentarily. The curtains hung ruby red and still as stone. Was there someone standing outside? I shivered as I rolled over in bed and cuddled up close to my husband. I felt like I'd just closed my eyes when I was disturbed. I had turned over while half asleep and found myself suddenly alone in bed. It's always disconcerting to find yourself unexpectedly alone in the middle of the night. At first, my face still buried in a pillow, I figured Daryl was on the toilet. As I rolled over and opened my eyes, I noticed a figure standing at the foot of our bed. It was Daryl. I jumped from fright and yelled, "Oh my God! Daryl! You frightened me!" I clutched my chest. "What are you doing standing there?" I asked. Daryl did not stir. His back still faced me. He seemed to be staring at the curtains in front of him. Then he spoke softly. "They're outside. They're calling." His voice was flat and vacant. He was sleep-talking again. I felt my stomach fill with boiling lead. "Come back to bed," I said shakily as I slowly sat up. Something wasn't right. "They're outside. They're coming." His voice sounded slightly slurred, like he'd been drinking. Daryl took a few quick steps towards the window. I felt my heart skip a beat. I ripped the duvet off my legs, but as my feet touched the floor, there was a tremendous smash. I screamed as the window to my right shattered into 1,000 pieces. The sudden commotion made me lose my balance, and I fell on the ground hard. I felt a frigid gust howl through the broken window. "What?" I didn't get a chance to finish speaking before the window in front of Daryl exploded too. The wind that blasted through was so strong and cold it forced my eyes closed. My teeth began to chatter. How was it suddenly so cold? "Daryl?" The wind died down, and I opened my eyes. Daryl was gone. My mind felt empty. My limbs were heavy. Confusion washed over me. "Daryl?" I said again. The wind had vanished, and the chill in the air had retreated completely. I slowly stood. My eyes searched the ground for signs of another rock. But there was nothing. I walked up to the closest smashed window. When I looked outside, all I saw was my garden, shrouded in darkness. The half-moon was obscured by wispy clouds. The cool night air washed over my confused face. "What?" I whispered, unable to comprehend what had just happened. I suddenly heard a hoarse whisper behind me. "Auntie Valerie, what's going on?" I spun around to see the dark silhouette of Jacob, standing in my bedroom doorway. I could just make out the look of worry on his face. I'm not sure. Your uncle is missing. I'm not sure what happened. The windows, they broke. I think I need to call the police." I hurried over to my phone. Within 15 minutes, 2 tired-looking police officers arrived and took my statement. I trembled as I spoke. I told them everything. I told them about my husband's dreams. I told them about the smashed window from the afternoon, and I also showed them the mess in my bedroom. They were sympathetic. They told me not to worry, that my husband probably hadn't gotten far, that he must have broken the windows in his sleep. When I tried to tell them there was no way my husband broke the windows, one of the cops said, "Look, people can do weird and out-of-character things while sleepwalking. We once had to go fetch some old university professor from some park in the middle of the night. He was up some tree and refused to climb down. He had done it all in his sleep." They said they'd look around the area and let me know if they found him. Jacob gave a statement too, but he had been asleep. A few minutes after the police left, I found myself sitting on my couch with a cup of cocoa clutched in my still shaking hands. Jacob sat near me and tried to comfort me. He got me a blanket. I was still unable to comprehend what had happened. My eyes stared into space. Where had Daryl gone? Who were those people? I felt a lump of dread lodge itself in my stomach. What the hell had happened? Come to me.
Focus Features invites you to succumb to the darkness.
Nosferatu.
From director Robert Eggers comes a masterpiece of horror.
He is coming. This creature is a force more powerful than evil. It is death itself.
Nosferatu. Rated R. Under 17nm without parent. Now playing only in theaters. Special engagements in Dolby and IMAX.
$15 for you, and you, and you! Everybody gets $15! Just stop by Take 5 Oil Change now through the end of February, get a Mobile One oil change, and you'll earn a $15 prepaid MasterCard. And you, and you, and you! See terms and conditions.
This episode is brought to you by FedEx. FedEx knows running a small business is hard enough without the hassle of shipping. That's why there's FedEx One Rate. With FedEx One Rate, you can ship your holiday packages cheaper than the post office for as low as $14.50 for small boxes. Visit FedEx.com/OneRate for details. Exclusions apply. Valid through January 19, 2025. FedEx One Rate. 2-day retail shipping, one flat rate.
A week went by. The police still had no information. Jacob postponed going home to help look after me. He was really such a sweet kid. It was late in the afternoon and I was preparing lunch. Suddenly, Jacob walked into the kitchen. Auntie Valerie, can I talk with you? I stopped dicing onions and looked up at him. His expression was guilty. He was awkwardly rubbing the back of his neck with his hand. Yes? What's up? I said curiously, putting down the knife. He looked embarrassed. His eyes couldn't meet mine. I kinda lied to the police and you about what happened that night, you know, last week, when it happened. I felt my breath catch in my throat. My heart fluttered. What do you mean? I said. He paused. It seemed to last forever. The room was so silent I could hear my heart thump loudly in my chest. Jacob still couldn't meet my gaze as he I forgot to close my curtains that night, and something must have disturbed me in my sleep because I woke up in the middle of the night before the window smashed. When I sat up in bed, I froze. I saw people standing outside, at least a dozen people. I couldn't see their faces, just dark shapes, their outlines. They were all in the garden. I didn't know what to do. Then suddenly, I heard the window smash and I got distracted. I looked away from my window for a second, and when I looked back, he paused. Tears were now forming in his eyes. I saw Uncle Daryl. He was standing right at my window. He was staring at me. I couldn't see his eyes, but I knew it was him. Slowly, he turned around and walked away. As I blinked, he vanished. That's when I got out of bed and came out to see you. I was convinced I dreamt the whole thing. I mean, how could that be possible? I was scared to tell the cops that you would think I was crazy, but now I don't think it was just my imagination. I've seen them again. Not in my dreams. I mean, I saw them outside my window. I saw them last night. I don't know what's happening. I think I should go home, but I don't want to abandon you. He was crying now. His voice was full of fear. I was shaking. I tried to keep my voice calm. Don't worry, my boy. Everything's going to be fine. I'm sure it was just a dream. I mean, I didn't see anyone else myself. The police are probably right. They'll find your uncle. I gave him a big hug. Maybe it would be a good idea for you to go home. You must miss your own bed. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. And after everything that's happened, you should go home. I'm sure your parents are anxious to see you. Let's get you sorted. Within an hour, Jacob was packed, and I drove him to the train station. We didn't speak much on the way there. And when we said goodbye, I gave him an extra tight hug. I'd never admit it to him, but I was dreading going back home alone, back to that same bed. The bedroom windows had been repaired, but I still felt a cold wind whenever I looked at them. It was 2:00 the next morning when my phone started ringing. Groggily, I reached over to my bedside table. I answered, my voice croaky from sleep. Yes, I said, sitting up. I switched on my light. They were on the train. I heard a flat, monotone voice answer. A chill rippled down my spine. Jacob, I said softly. They were on the train. They found me. All traces of sleep vanished from my voice. Jacob, this isn't funny, I said angrily and terrified. There was a slight pause before he continued. They're outside your house, too. They're outside. They want to come inside. What the hell do you want, Jacob? Are you okay? Suddenly, the phone went dead. I just sat in bed. My nerves were burning with fear. I didn't get any sleep that night. I wasn't surprised when I got a call from my sister a few hours later. Jacob had never gotten home. I told her and the police I'd dropped him off, and the security footage at the train station confirmed my story. It even showed him boarding the train at 6:30 that evening. He'd taken an overnight train, but the security footage from his destination showed no trace of him. Just like Daryl. He had vanished. I also hadn't told anyone about Jacob's phone call, and the police never brought it up. Had it ever happened? I decided not to tell my sister anything more than what I'd told the police. I felt a numbness in my brain and my body that refused to abate. I hardly had the motivation to do anything except eat and drink for days after that. I haven't been able to leave my house for a week. I don't open the curtains anymore. Every night, I sit in my living room, the lights on. And every night since Jacob disappeared, I've heard a gentle tapping, a tapping on my living room windows. Last night, I heard their voices for the first time. I heard Daryl and Jacob. They were both calling me, stretching out the vowels in my name as they spoke. Valerie, Valerie, they want to come in, Valerie, they just want to talk. It's not so bad, Valerie. I felt completely helpless. The police were useless, of course. Whenever I called them and they showed up, the things outside would just vanish. The cops told me to stop bothering them or they'd charge me with wasting police time. And based on what happened to Jacob, running away really wasn't an option. The sun is beginning to set, and I find myself sitting once again in my living room. I've boarded up all my windows and sit on my sofa clutching a golf club in my hands. Maybe I can't stop them from getting inside, but I'd be damned if I wasn't going to put up a fight. The sun is now completely gone. I can hear the tapping on my window. It is louder than before. My grip on the golf club tightens. The tapping has now turned into full-on knocking. Someone was banging their fists hard on the boarded windows. I've decided to write this all down, so that when I suddenly disappear, people may be able to figure out what happened here. Maybe they can find Daryl or Jacob or me. But I figure it's likely no one will ever see me again. Perhaps it won't be so bad. At least I will be with Daryl and Jacob again soon. Thanks for listening. Thank you so much to my author this week, Matthew N. Clark, for yet another brilliant story. And if you'd like a story featured on the show, you can send it to scareyoutosleep@gmail.com. And please follow the show at scareyoutosleep on all of the socials. You know what they all are. I think I'm on all of them. And you can follow me personally at Shelby B. Novak on all of the socials as well. And before we get into the ramble, I wanted to give a huge shout out to all of my long-haul trucker listeners, or even short-haul truckers. I don't know if that's a thing. I always heard the term long-haul truckers. Are there short-haul truckers? Probably. And if so, and if you listen, then shout out to you too. I have been receiving many messages from all of you Some of them older, but I, for some reason, just noticed all of them, and I was like, wow, there's a pattern here. Many of you who listen are long-haul truckers, and that's a difficult job. And I'm glad to hear that I can keep you company. Strange that I don't put you to sleep, because I know that's an issue with that particular vocation, but I'm happy to be here no matter what. So, stay awake, y'all. And I never say y'all. What was that? I don't know. Stay awake. And thank you for being the backbone of society, because without you, we wouldn't have our things, our pretty things, or our food, or our textiles, or our whale blubber, all of the modern conveniences. But seriously, thank you for listening, and thank you to what you do. You're great, and I have a huge respect for, again, that particular vocation. So thank you. Anyway, if you'd like ad-free episodes, you can listen on Patreon, or maybe you're already listening on Patreon, in which case, thank you for your service. You can listen, you can go to patreon.com/scareyoutosleep. iOS listeners, Apple people, you Apple people, I've never been an Apple person, but you Apple people, use a browser if you're going to sign up, because Apple likes to charge an extra 30% if you subscribe through the app on your phone. Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun? So glad I've never been an Apple user. No, nothing against you. I know we all chose our sides in the early phone wars, and sometimes you just got to stick with your side because you learned how to do you learned the UI, and I get it. So anyway, Apple users, please subscribe. I'm just trying to save you 30% because it'll charge you an extra 30%. That goes for all of the Patreon people you subscribe to, by the way, not just me. That is, well, it's a trade-off. It's either they charge you 30 extra percent, or the person you're subscribing to loses 30%. And we all had to choose which one. And I chose the one where I can just warn you, hey, I can save you $1. Sorry, I'm looking out for my own skin here. But I am warning you. And I haven't mentioned that warning in a little while, so I thought I'd throw that out there. Patreon in the new year will be much more flooded with good things, because fingers crossed, knock on wood, I'm not going to be getting divorced or going to be in the hospital this year or my having any family members have major health issues and then pass away. So let's have a better 2025 so I can focus more on this show and bring you more entertainment, both here on the main feed and to Patreon. Sorry about this year, by the way. Shit happens. Anyway, let's see what else, other housekeeping stuff. I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting. You know the drill by now. So let's move into the ramble. This is the part of the show where I talk about my week. I talk about random stuff. I talk about what I've baked. This is where Baking Corner is, that you see people posting about. And if it's not your jam, and if you'd like to stay, if this brings you out of the spooky mood, that is totally understandable. And I will see you next week, and you can feel free to turn it off now. I'll wait. Goodbye. Good night. Come back. No, you don't have to come back. Are you gone? Are they gone? Okay, let's ramble. I got a lot to ramble about. This episode is a day late. Well, maybe even, it's 11 p.m. It's probably going to be more like 2 days late. Because I've mentioned this before on the show. Sometimes I get this thing called mush mouth. I call it mush mouth. It's not called that. I don't know what to call it. Where if I've recorded a lot of things in 1 week or in a series of days, my face stops working right. My mouth stops working right. It's like I can't record anymore. I stumble over my words a lot. It'll even happen when I'm speaking normally. And it's like my mouth is like, done. I'm done. I'm done with you. I'm done talking. I'm done forming sentences. I'm done. My eyes stop communicating with my mouth. So like I read sentences incorrectly. And then sometimes I get this weird OCD thing. And I don't mean that in a flippant way. I actually have that. So please I actually mean in this, it's one of my like, I don't know, intrusive thoughts. I'm not a fucking doctor. Anyway, but like I start to convince myself that I've forgotten how to read. And then I freak out about that, even though I haven't. That hasn't happened. But I'm like, oh my God, what if I've forgotten how to read? And then I'm like, what if I forget how to read? It's, brains. What are you going to do? But anyway, that happened to me last week or the week before, whenever I was trying to get this done ahead of time so that it would come out while I was away with my family. And it just didn't happen. I could not. That weird disconnect. It's like my brain disconnects, but I also have like there's a physicality to it where my mouth really feels too stiff to work correctly. And my tongue does some stuff, not fun stuff. It just works incorrectly. Anyway, so that's what happened. Boo, tomato. Feel free. I know. I'm trying to get better, but I'm sure there's a way to overcome that. I'll figure it out at some point. But that week I had to record a lot. I did 2 separate episodes of the Bloody Disgusting podcast because we were also getting ahead for that podcast. And I did the episode I did the Signalman that came out last week. And I was starting this one. And there was something else I did. What was it? Maybe it's something that hasn't come out yet. I don't remember. Oh, I think I did some ads for the Bloody FM network or for Bloody. Sometimes I don't know where those ads go. They're like, hey, can you read these? I'm like, yeah, for sure. And then like, I don't know. Sometimes I'll hear people be like, I heard your voice. Read this ad for this thing. In fact, on the Bloody Disgusting podcast recently, Zena was like, I heard you read this ad for this thing. And I was like, oh, cool. So my voice just floats out there. It's just not my own anymore. It belongs to you, the people. Baking. Do you want me to talk about what I baked for Christmas? I will. This is going to be a little bit of a long ramble. Again, another warning. Just turn it off, or just listen. Okay, so this is another thing. Before we get to baking, it wasn't a Q&A. A few people called it a Q&A. I didn't mean for it to be a Q&A. I actually was not looking to some cues personally, but I was having kind of a, let's see, I'm not going to call it a rough night. Let's call it a self-pitying giant baby night. Was it the day after Christmas? Maybe it was the day after Christmas. Ooh, it was real quick after Christmas though. I was kind of having a self-pitying big baby night about my feeling. I was all up in my feelings about some stuff that I'm not going to tell you about. Sorry. No one knows about it actually. I keep a lot of secrets to myself. I'm an open book for a lot of things, but I'm sure everyone, like, I'm not some special quirky little girl who is like, I keep secrets to myself. We all do. There's some things you keep close to your vest that you don't tell anyone in the whole world. And I'm no exception. And I have a few of those things and I got all kind of up in my head about them a couple days ago. Doesn't matter. It's fine. But anyway, I thought to lift my spirits, I would do this thing. It's called NGL. I guess it stands for Not Gonna Lie, which I know that's what it stands for online, but I think that's anyway. It's like a website or an app. It's an app. And I've seen other people do it and you can just post it and people can send you anonymous messages. Kind of like I did for the one thing, the actual Q&A I did. This was not supposed to, I said just like, send me your thoughts because I don't like mine right now or some form of that. I don't remember exactly how I said it, but I posted that on Instagram, on my personal Instagram, which I think I'm going to do every once in a while now. But anyway, it went really well. I was expecting to get some mean ones, then I got a bunch of them that were like warning me like, oh, you're going to get some mean ones. And I'm like, girl, I grew up on the mean streets of the internet. I know how people are. I know how they are. I know what I'm signing up for. And I was a little bit tipsy, so I was also double signed up for whatever. I was ready for whatever. It's like no one can hurt my feelings. And I think I said that too. No one can hurt my feelings more than I can hurt my feelings. Bring it on. But then no one was mean. So thank you. Many of you were very, I don't say this word a lot out loud, but horny. So horny. Was not expecting that, honestly. Clutch my pearls some of and by the way, this truly is anonymous. I think some people were hesitant to send me anything because, and I don't blame you. I fell for this is anonymous prank one time when I was in high school. It was like one of those, like, I don't know, I don't remember what it was, but it was like, oh, fill out this thing. And it was like, who's your crush and things like that. And I totally did. And it wasn't actually anonymous. And it was a big prank on me. And it was mean. And so I definitely have weird feeling. I feel like nothing's ever anonymous. This really is, though. I am not pranking you. I would never do that because it's happened to me. This is truly anonymous. So if you saw it and you were like, I'm not going to send that because I don't know if it really is. It really is. I have no fucking idea who sent any of these things. It literally just shows up like, here's a message. And that's it. Like the way you saw them when I was reposting a couple of them, that's exactly what I see. That's it. That's all I see is the message. Yeah, some of them, though, I was blushing. Wow. I didn't post any of those. Those will remain private, as I said. Because Jesus Christ. Well, I know how some of you feel, or you were just saying that to make me feel better. Maybe. Some of them, though, were very specific. Which is, again, I know what I asked for. I understand the internet. Don't worry about it. I wasn't offended, or I was shocked just because it's me. I wasn't, the only reason I was shocked is because I wasn't aware anyone felt that way about me and had those particular scenarios just right there, pulled up. They came in quick. But anyway, some of you had some really funny stuff to say, which is kind of what I was looking for. I mean, look, I'll take whatever. Again, I was feeling so like just, really hating myself in that moment for a lot of reasons, just really down on myself. So any ego boost was welcome, but I did get some fun. Whoever sent the, I'm creating a new version of Mario Kart that encourages drunk driving. I've been thinking about that for days. I don't know why that cracked me up so hard. That was like exactly what I needed in that moment, was just something like that, like something so ridiculous like that. So thank you for that. And I got a lot of very lovely messages, that were very kind, that were not X-rated, that were very nice. And I appreciated those too, because I needed those as well. And then I got a bunch of questions, which again, I was not trying to do a Q&A. A friend of mine even said like, oh, the Q&A you did the other night. I was like, it wasn't supposed to be a Q&A. Again, was not in the mood to A some Qs. And I'm usually in the mood to A some Qs, but like I was not that night. I needed silliness, ridiculousness, ego boosting. I needed all that. I'm only human, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes we just need a little, I don't know what you would call it. I don't know what you would call it. Anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. I'm probably going to do that every once in a while. The link is like, it's gone. It was on my stories. That's the thing. It was on my stories. So it disappeared after 24 hours. It was one of those things, though, where you kind of forget who watches your stories. And I got a few laugh reacts from people who I was like, oh, didn't realize you watched my stories. Glad you thought it was funny, especially at the ones where I pointed out that I got some very salacious ones. What else? Let's see. So yeah, thank you for your honesty. I feel like I'm very honest here. So when you're very honest with me, it makes me feel like less like I'm just out here, blowing in the wind by myself. So that's nice of you. I had some people confess some things that were concerning. Yeah, I don't know what to do with them. I've actually kind of deleted them from my brain a little bit. I just remembered them like right now. Because, wow, some of you took it as confession time, and not about me, confession time. It just, your own crimes. So there's those two. I don't know what to do with those things. Please don't make me an accessory. I don't want to ever have to like go to court and testify against you or something. What do you wear to court? What? I'd have to get up so early. I mean, I don't get up that late anymore, but I don't want to go to court. Can you not make me an accessory or something? Like, please. Anyway. I keep saying anyway. Okay, this is long. This is actually maybe a little, like, egregiously long. So maybe I will keep what I baked at Christmas to a minimum. Maybe I'll go into more detail on Patreon. So I baked, just real quick, I baked 2 chocolate cinnamon rolls. Recipe available on the Scare You to Eat Facebook group, because I post it a lot, like every year. It's my family's favorite recipe, or it's not, I don't know. It's my favorite recipe, but it is my family's recipe. So go check it out. The recipe is there. I've written it out for you. I translated my grandmother's and my mother's handwriting for you and put it into a nice little printout sheet. Like anyone prints things out anymore. I don't even own a printer. I wish I did. P.O. box is in the description, by the way, if you want to send me a printer. Don't send me a printer. I'm not an e-beggar. I just thought that was kind of a funny thing. Anyway, so I made 2 chocolate cinnamon rolls. I made Parker House rolls, which are, oh God, those are just, if you don't know, Parker House rolls are basically, whenever you go somewhere and they just have bread rolls, and like, they're the best. They're just so good. They're just basic bread rolls, and they're fluffy, and you can tell they baked them like together. So they're like torn apart. Oh, that's what a Parker House roll is. I made a double batch of that. I grilled some steaks. I made it's peanut butter chocolate candy. It's basically like a homemade Reese's, but like I make them just in a pan I just smoosh all the peanut butter filling, and then I pour chocolate over the top. And it's something my grandma, who passed this year, she used to make me every year. And a lot of times, because I worked retail, I couldn't come down for Christmas, and I definitely couldn't come down for candy making. And so my grandma always made sure I had a batch just for me of my peanut butter candy. And I still have the Pyrex dish she sent up with my parents, I forgot how she got that to me that year. It was the last year she ever made it, though, before she got sick. And I still have my Pyrex dish, and it was the last time she ever sent it up to me. And so it meant a lot and this was the first year I've had it since she made it that last time, because last year my family didn't make candy because she was near the end, and it was really sad, and I think we were just not in the mood to make it. So this year I have a picture on Instagram of us making the fudge, and that was another one she used to make, and I had to make it separate. Anyway, you don't care about my family interdynamics and why I do things. Okay, moving on. What else did I bake? I baked something. Oh, a spice cake. I made a spice cake with eggnog frosting. The initial plan was to make a caramel drizzle, but we didn't have heavy cream, and it was like, was it Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? It was not a day you want to go to the store, or it was closed. Can't remember. And so I couldn't make the caramel drizzle, but I was like, oh, eggnog buttercream. I've never made it before. I just eyeballed it. I didn't look up. I just made my normal vanilla buttercream and threw in a bunch of eggnog instead of heavy cream or milk. There you go. Bada bing, bada boom. Eggnog buttercream. Very good on spice cake. It was excellent on a spice cake. Excellent. It was so good. I feel like I made other stuff. Oh, I helped with other stuff it was like one of those, like I was helping with other stuff too. My mom and I both did stuff. I helped my aunt with like the cornbread. Christmas Eve, we usually have like a stew with cornbread. I ate so many tamales. Oh my God, so many. I'll never be, I feel like as many tamales as I ate, I didn't get enough. I wish I had brought back like a dozen with me. That was dumb not to, but the holidays. Oh God, this is so long. This is so stupidly long. I'm just going to cut this right here. Go get some sleep. Sweet dreams.